Well, after getting Washington Republicans to stand and cheer during the State of the Union for the preservation of those social safety net programs, their party colleagues have drafted proposals to end. President Biden, as we've been reporting, has taken the fight to the home turf of one of his biggest GOP critics. Biden, as we mentioned, is in Florida today, a state governed by Ron DeSantis, campaigning for Medicare and Social Security to remain as they are now. Democratic consultant Ed Emerson and Republican strategist Tim Rosales, Tab Berg, with me now live to analyze his moves. Gentlemen, good morning to you.
Good morning.
First, to go back to Tuesday night and what appears to have been kind of off-the-cuff stagecraft for the president actually had congressional Republicans cheering for his support of keeping Social Security and Medicare. With that shown live from coast to coast, how does the GOP still try to strike down or trim back these programs to save the country money? Senator Rick Scott floated a 12-point policy agenda that would affect all of that. Tab, how do they handle this?
Well, I mean, it's purely a campaign strategy on the part of the president. Republicans don't want to cut Medicare, don't want to cut Social Security, and I think the president knows that. And you know, coming from him, who has 4 times proposed cutting Social Security and Medicare, I think it's a little bit hypocritical, as Senator Scott stated.
Ed, what's your reaction to how this is being couched now, despite the proposals that have already been put out?
I think it's great. I think there's a debate going on. Joe Biden looked at the floor and got agreement on some issues that no cuts to Social Security and Medicaid. I say cash that check and move on. Let's find something else to fix. That was simple. It was easy. And, you know, now there's clarity. There's always the thing that, and with respect, the name calling, the hypocritical stuff. That's the next precipice that we're going to walk to, and we're going to stop using that language. We're going to, you can't howl at the president while he's making a speech. Those folks are extremists within the Republican Party. We have folks in the Democratic Party that perhaps annoy the Republicans as much. I think Biden hit the road. 500,000 new jobs, the lowest unemployment rate since 1969. I think he's got a lot to tout. I think he's done a great job. I thought it was a really good speech.
Even if you only kind of follow politics, no doubt this trip to Florida is right in the face of DeSantis and the Republican Party. The president spent a lot of time Tuesday touting uniting and bipartisanship, even though he's been criticized for that speech being one of the most divisive State of the Unions ever. So is he still looking at all like a great uniter today, Ed?
Well, let me tell you, anybody that does campaign advertising for any kind of race, Assembly, Senate, Congressional, Senate race, they'll tell you that negative advertising works. They really do. You hit somebody, you hit them hard, and you say the same things over and over again. I think there is a group that there are people inside the Republican Party, inside the Democratic Party, that find that an effective way to govern. And I disagree with it. I think there are ways. I was hoping the other night for Kevin McCarthy, the speaker, Kevin McCarthy is how you refer to him, and President Biden moment for the two of them to just sort of say, you know, let's step outside this and let's see if we can create some sort of momentum going forward on immigration. Immigration needs to be fixed in this country. Homelessness, huge issue. Exactly. Let's fight about that and forget Hunter Biden's laptop for a second.
All righty. Tab, how is the president doing on unity?
Well, I think it was funny. I mean, almost a stark contrast where he would talk about unity, and some of the media pundits talked about this being a unifying speech, when he based much of his speech on a false premise, a false claim that Republicans' dream is to cut Social Security and Medicare. So I think he kind of drew a stark contrast there. And negative campaigning absolutely does work, but there are issues that we need to be fighting about. There's a reason 71% of Americans no longer feel the country's heading in the right direction. And he didn't really address any of those issues. He didn't really tackle the issues that people, and it was almost kind of a contrast between, was he being optimistic or was he being Pollyanna? His claims about the economy just don't jive with what regular Americans are feeling every day.
Okay. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders delivered the Republican rebuttal to President Biden's speech. Unless you live in Arkansas, where I worked for many years, when you see her, you think President Trump's press secretary, which at first seemed to me like sort of a subliminal endorsement for a re-election run for him. But she spent a lot of time talking about this being the time for new Republican leadership. He would not be new. She also kind of hammered hard on Joe Biden's age, but Trump is 76 years old. What gives? Tab?
Well, I think she is right. I mean, and you're seeing a whole new wave of new Republican leaders stepping up with DeSantis, with Tim Scott, with Sarah Huckabee. I mean, there's a whole host of these new people bringing up new ideas and new ways to tackle problems. And I think that that's really where the Republican Party largely wants to go at this point.
Alrighty, Ed?
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Ed.
That's my thing. That's the future of the Republican Party. I mean, Kevin McCarthy actually let her preside over the floor of the assembly, and this woman doesn't believe that Joe Biden is president of the United States. I, however, really agree with Tab. There are some good people coming up, young people coming up in the Republican Party. I'm not an ageist because I'm older than the both of you combined. I think it's important that we pay respect and that we give respect to folks who have spent their lives serving this country. I think Joe Biden is one of those people. I think they did the right thing leaving the White House. Don't sit there in the beltway, if you will, and listen to folks carping at you. Get out on the road, talk to voters, and maybe understand that things aren't so good. Try to understand why you're getting hammered in the polls.
All righty, gentlemen, we're going to have to put a pin in it there. As always, we appreciate your insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now,